你看看特斯拉都停在这里，其他的不可以走。
交警说交通管制，只不允许特斯拉行驶。
哎呀，又抓到一个啊！特斯拉。
This is an airport in China's Hunan province that forbids Teslas from entering or parking in the parking lot. This is a radio and TV station in Jiangxi province, which also bars and forbids the entry of Tesla vehicles. In fact, you may not park them anywhere near the property. And here in the capital of Guangdong, Guangzhou, Teslas all of a sudden randomly were pulled to the side of the road and not allowed to travel on certain roads with no explanation. What is going on? So why would China suddenly ban Teslas from entering certain areas, driving on certain roads, and being near certain facilities? Well, it's quite simple. The Chinese government is worried about espionage. You see, modern vehicles, not just EVs, have a lot of technology built into them. We've got cameras, microphones, GPS systems, and a bevy of other things that can be used for espionage. And let's face it, it's true. If you have a car parked near a certain building, it can record who goes in, who goes out, it can record audio, it can give you times, dates, exact locations. There's quite a lot that you can do, and of course, with a little bit of modification, you could definitely boost the signal and probably pick up audio inside a building, or what have you. So, of course, it's an espionage tool. It's a potential espionage tool. But it's quite telling that the Chinese government would ban Teslas because they're quite used to using technology as an espionage tool abroad, which we'll get to shortly. I just wanted to let you know that it's not just these specific areas that ban Teslas, but anything to do with the army. So, PLA army bases, police stations, any facility that's run by or staffed by the People's Liberation Army, Teslas are forbidden and banned from entering those locations or being anywhere near them. In fact, the Beidaihe area where the Communist Party has their holidays, their beach holidays and secret meetings, that entire area, Teslas are not allowed to enter. This is the same area that the top leadership of the CCP ran to recently when there were these massive floods. In fact, just before the typhoon and floods hit, they all went there to enjoy a nice beachside holiday while everybody suffered in Beijing and the surrounding areas. So, of course, this is a sensitive area. The top leadership is there, including Xi Jinping himself. So no Teslas allowed. So let's switch over to the other side. Of course, if China is blocking Teslas out of fear of espionage, we know it's because they are using technology abroad to do the same thing. We've already seen this with Huawei, how they subsidized Huawei so much that they were able to undercut any competition and get installed all over America in rural areas, specifically near military bases. And Huawei's been caught out with backdoors and sending information and encrypted packets to China. This is something that has been proven and caught out in the past. TikTok has been caught out tracking journalists and using their phones to find out where they went and who they spoke to. We've also seen that TikTok has been caught out sending US user data and information to servers in China. Chinese technology is used for espionage. And let's face it, everybody, China's whole tech sector is built on IP theft. A huge portion of China's economy is built on intellectual property theft. The military is based on intellectual property theft. Every single military vehicle that the Chinese have is a copy of an American or a Russian or some other kind of vehicle. Of course, the technology too is all based on something else. How many countries are out there trying to steal ideas and intellectual property from China? Zero. You don't see the American military suddenly releasing an aircraft or a tank or something based off of a Chinese design because, well, let's face it, all they would be doing is copying themselves. So here's the thing. Should you be worried about your Chinese EV, say your BYD or your Neo or whatever it is you have bought and are driving around in Australia or Ireland or God forbid, the US or wherever? Should you be worried about that car? Yes, you should. And I'm going to tell you why. Chinese companies are not like American companies or Western companies in general. They do not have this barrier between the government and themselves. And I'm going to give you an example. I was actually watching one of those true crime type dramas, and there was a situation where somebody had killed his girlfriend, okay? And they were trying to figure out what had happened to her body. So they had caught him on camera, kind of dropping her car off somewhere and then getting into his car, which was a fairly recent, probably 2018 model Chevy truck, like a low-end Chevy truck. He drove it back to his place, and they didn't know what had happened to her. They didn't know what happened to the body. So what they did was the investigators, the FBI, whoever's investigating this thing, actually had to get a court order and go and approach Chevrolet and get them to cooperate. And they were able to use the black box in the car, for lack of a better word, because, you know, all cars these days, because of the GPS that's built into them, and all of the engine management software and all that, they have an ECU and it stores a lot of information. It logs a lot of information. They were actually able to get from that black box, even an entry-level Chevy truck, low-end one, they were able to pinpoint where it was at certain times. And because they were able to see, oh, he parked in a certain area near a wooded space, they were actually able to find her body there because that's where he dumped the body. So the reason I'm telling you about this true crime thing is there was a lot of effort on the part of the investigators in order to get that data from that car, because they had to get a judge to sign a warrant, to sign a this and a that, and then, you know, approach Chevrolet and actually get permission to see that. The Chinese government doesn't have that problem. All Chinese companies must, by law, answer to the Chinese Communist Party and do what they say. They may not refuse. So if the Chinese government says, you are Joe Smith driving your BYD or your Neo or your Netta or whatever it is you're driving in Australia, they're like, Joe Smith, where was he on Tuesday at 3 p.m.? Whatever Chinese brand you're driving, they're going to have to relinquish that data to the Chinese Communist Party. And if they say, what was he talking about in his car? And can we have the camera feed? They're going to have to hand that over immediately because, you know, I hate to say it, but with modern cars, there's no way that you can know if you're being listened to or not. You see, all these wonderful technologies like hands-free phone calls and so on, well, that means you've got a microphone in your car, all right? And it can listen at any time. Do you know if your microphone's listening to you or not? No, it's all up to the software. And if the Chinese government wanted to know something about you because you're an engineer in a top company, or they wanted to know something about you because you're a dissident, it's quite easy for them to make sure that the microphone is recording all the time and sends all of the audio over to China or to a local server in the US, which is then sent to China. So of course, they can listen in on you. They can see all the cameras if they want to. They can track exactly where you go. So should you be worried about your BYD or your Neo or your Netta V or your insert Chinese EV brand name car here? Yes, you should. And that is because the potential is there. And there simply aren't enough barriers in the way to prevent the Chinese government from gaining access to all of that information. I hope people can see past this idea of, oh, look, cheap electronic vehicle, cheap car from China, good, I don't need to spend that much money, and see that we're dealing with a hostile government here. The fact that they treat Teslas as an potential espionage device and actually ban it from entire cities or towns or areas, it shows you their intent. And I do believe that it's appropriate to respond in kind. If somebody is threatening to harm you, you should be prepared to defend yourself. And if somebody is behaving in such a way, you should realize that there's a reason for that. And that's because they're doing the same thing. They're doing the exact same thing that they're worried about. So as far as Chinese EVs are concerned, go ahead, buy them. By the way, I'm very pro-EV. I'm not against electronic vehicles. What I am against is the Chinese Communist Party and it having access to you and what you say and where you go and what you do. Especially if you have any kind of a position that they can take advantage of. Like I said, you just need to be a low-level engineer or somebody who works in a certain company that they're interested in, and they could spy on everything that happens in that parking lot, pick up on conversations, record comings and goings of people and cars, vehicles, that type of thing. If you're in the military, of course, you should not be even thinking about getting any kind of Chinese electronic vehicle. And in fact, no electronic device from China right now, because if you were buying a Huawei phone or a Xiaomi or something, that's another avenue into where you are and what you do. So I would be careful. And this is not fear-mongering. This is just common sense. Anyway, guys, I really hope you learned something from this video. I can't wait to see you in the next one. And if you want to find out more about what's going on in China, and I'm talking about up-to-date, down-to-the-wire news, events, and everything else in between, come and join me for the China Show on Friday. This is my live show that I do with my business partner, Lawa86, where we cover what's new in China, the soft power hour, the Wu Maos, the haters, the everything else. It's fantastic. It's a lot of fun. It's comedic, serious, and everything in between. So I hope to catch you there on Friday. And until then, you know the drill. As always, stay awesome.